Recently, I figured out if I would be able to do all the special effects on one of my planned feature films with AI, then I could make it for around $30,000, because this specific one has limited cast and locations. But somehow I wasn't excited, and I should be, right? Because 30,000 is so much better and easier to get than 100 or even 50,000. The problem is I subconsciously set the filming date to be in 3 years, when we will pay off our debt. And yes, we won't have the payments anymore, but we will not have the $30,000 laying around just to be spent. But waiting even longer seemed like torture, especially since it had taken me years to get to this point, which is making no budget shorts. And that seems very much like a starting point, not a point where I should be after a couple of years of filmmaking. There are skills that I built over that time, but not much that I can show. And that feature project wasn't the only one that I tried to wrangle into a schedule and couldn't quite make it work. Because while I'm quite haphazard with what project to work on from week to week, I was quite an obsessive planner for the projects that I want to make in 5 to 10 years. At first it's really fun and motivating to plan, but then I started to stress about all the things that I would need to have to make those films, and that took all the fun from working on any of my movies. I noticed that it's similar to when I was trying to plot my books. I am excited while plotting, but then actually writing is pretty boring, and the characters are lifeless, and I would need to go through serious editing trying to put some life back into them. And I very strongly dislike editing, which is why I'm a pantser, writing as I go, sometimes jumping there and back, and enjoying the adventure with the characters, because I only kind of know what happens next. And so I decided to treat my filmmaking similarly, to leave my future projects as vague vibes of I may go someday, and focus only on the starting adventures, which I know isn't something that most filmmakers do struggle with. Most instead have this tendency to pick a movie that should be I will make it someday as their current project, and get frustrated that I can't get anywhere with it. And what I did was pretty much the same. I did know that I didn't have the time to make a feature film right now, or in the nearest future, and for the next 3 years I could spend very little on my movies. And I prepared a few projects accordingly, but my mind kept coming back to the films that I would make after those 3 years. I did know that I would need to make those smaller projects first, but that didn't really stop me from figuring out the big ones, or rather trying to figure them out, which led to lack of motivation, because most of the time I couldn't. I ended up working on nothing at all. I am guessing that happened because I am a pantser, and the very sensible advice for making no budget projects to make inventory of available resources and write a script around that didn't work for me, because that acts pretty much as an outline, and I ended up not liking the story written that way in the end. The Sneeze Wizard was my best story written that way, but in the end nobody was really excited about it, so we cancelled this project. And most of my other projects written like that didn't even reach pre-production. So for a very long time, few years at least, I didn't have a small project that I could film fairly soon. And figuring out no-budget scripts were as frustrating as figuring out how to get money and other resources for the bigger projects. And at least I liked the bigger projects, so obviously I drifted towards them. But somehow over time I did end up with few projects that I could start working on right now and finish them just by working and dragging my family into it. But no budget, no crazy locations, no cast members that my family can't feel. The first one I can finish the quickest came to me quite as a surprise. It's a documentary about my family buying and renovating a 100-year-old courthouse. I recorded tons of footage because it's really interesting to me. The process, the building, how it looks like, how it did look like. And I was thinking about someday turning it into a YouTube channel. But lately I decided I don't want another YouTube channel to manage, and I won't really have time for another one in the next few years. And even after those years, I would rather make my feature films, fantasy feature films, not managing a YouTube channel about this house. As interesting as it is, I do prefer fantasy. So it's been just sitting on my hard drive waiting for me to have an epiphany that I can turn it into a one-off feature, especially since we are mostly done with the most important repairs. So there will be some ending point. Next up would be the embroidery shop short, which I originally wrote for a short story anthology, and about halfway through the writing I noticed that I didn't write anything that I couldn't film yet. So I kept slight rails on this story as I was writing, so not to mess that up. And even the monsters scene that happens at the end, I wrote in the way that I'm confident that I could film it. Number 3 is the Hellhounds of Midwinter's Eve, and that I adapted from a short story one of my writer friends wrote, and I originally planned to only submit it for grants. And if I wouldn't get them, which I didn't, then I just wouldn't make the film. But over time, I figured how to make it cheaper, so I actually can do it fairly soon with very limited resources. And the last one is a recent project I came up with. It's an unscripted feature focusing mostly on martial arts training, while it is going to still be a fantasy movie. And I will be filming it over the course of a year. I'm still not exactly sure what the plot is going to be, so I am a little bit anxious if it will work or not. But in the worst case, as a main actress in that movie, I will get the much needed exercise. And actually I have another project that will be the fastest to make, but it's not exactly filmmaking one. I'm planning to record an audiobook version of my Christmas in Sherwood short story with AI illustrations. Anyway, after deciding to focus only on the small projects, I was not at peace. At first, I did feel the relief of not stressing about the future projects, but soon I began to feel uneasy. Will I ever make those movies if I'm not planning for them now? After all, as the saying goes, if you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time, and so on. About the same time, I was thinking through one of my writer friends saying that she came to realize that her writing is her ministry, not arguing with strangers on social media. Shocking, I know. But my movies couldn't really be a ministry, could they? That felt way too pretentious. Even though I could see how the books that I would be adapting into those movies could be seen as ministry. The much needed, clean, uplifting and moral fantasy stories. And movies like that are even more needed. So I logicked myself into a corner and had to admit that maybe my movies could be treated as ministry too. And then it clicked that my reluctance to let go of planning 10 years ahead was all about keeping the illusion of control. But it was never truly up to me to make those movies happen. Sure, I can do things to make that more likely, but the scale of all that's needed is way beyond me. But if God truly wants those movies to be made, they will be. And all I need to do is keep working, so I'm actually ready when the time comes. So I gave the control and the planning to where it always belonged, to God, and was finally able to get to work on one of my current projects. With joy. Thank you for watching, and I hope you will find joy in your work too.